The best of ACS.
Thank you guys very much for coming out. I'm Adam Carolla. That's Dennis Prager right there.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dennis Prager. That's Adam Carolla. We've done this a lot all over the country. I love this man. No, I just want you to know I love this man. I adore him. He is special. He's a terrific human being. I am honored to be with him. Just wanted to get that out of my system. Okay?
What do you love about me, Dennis? And let's limit it to 18 minutes.
Okay, that's it. Now you know why. That was a unique response to what I just had to say.
I love Dennis because no one in my family laughed at any of my takes or witticisms or anything. And Dennis is a great laugher. You know, some people are good huggers. Dennis is a great laugher because he's big and he's gregarious. And moments ago, we were just backstage, and he said to me, I just spoke with James Carville, and he said, that guy talks more than you. And I said, right, because I inhale.
Okay, so you're laughing. It doesn't render me unique that I found that hilarious. That was an immediately very witty, funny response. That's just there is.
Yes, James Carville breathes. I think he breathes through his belly button so that he can continue talking uninterrupted for 45 minutes.
Actually, I didn't say talks more there. I said he's more of a live wire.
That's right.
That was the term I used. Anyway, we have gone around the country to talk about life together. We made a movie together called No Safe Spaces, which if you didn't see in theaters, you will be able to see via, I don't know, smoke signals,
yes.
Braille. You'll be able to get the Braille edition
video
of the
on
movie.
Demand, as they say.
You'll get a video. There, it was great being with Adam all that time. I want to share with you a very we don't rehearse, because we want this to be utterly spontaneous. So he does not know what I'm about to say, but I'm honored. I know you listen to my radio show, so
yes.
You probably heard me mention this, and I'd love to get your take. So folks, last year, I speak at a lot of colleges, which I love to do because I want to talk to young people. And at Purdue University in Indiana last year, I gave a speech, and all of a sudden in the Purdue newspaper, just a few weeks ago, the vice, listen to his title, the vice provost for diversity and inclusion. Okay, you're allowed to throw up if you need to. Who apparently attended the speech, said that I said slavery wasn't bad. Now, do you understand how bizarre that is? First of all, raise your hand if you know anyone who doesn't think slavery was bad. I'd like to see a show of hands. You're anonymous. You're not on camera. I never met anybody who thought, Dennis, slavery was a damn good thing.
Well, I may have met 3 people in my life who thought it was a good idea, but no one has ever said it out loud, especially on a college campus in 2020, right? I mean, you have to really, let's just reverse engineer some of this stuff that they say you say.
Right.
Because 20 minutes before this, they said that he ridiculed Anne Frank.
That's right, in Newsweek.
Okay, so that was in Newsweek. Okay,
right.
So let's just say for a second that heterosexual white male conservative Dennis Prager said, I'm going to give a speech and I'm going to have it documented. I'll do a fireside chat or I'll get in front of a large group at Purdue and I will give nuanced explanations on why slavery was awesome and why Anne Frank is a witch. How would that work?
Yeah.
And you are a great orator. So if you, in fact, showed up on stage to make a case for slavery, I think you would have done an awesome job. Instead of the murky comments about slavery that you made, or Anne Frank, right?
It's so anyway, by the way, to Newsweek's credit, they dropped the article, they rewrote it, and they said we misrepresented Mr. Prager. To their credit, which is fine. So as far as I'm concerned, well, it's largely over. Of course, in the world of the internet, there's still, if you type in Dennis Prager ridiculed Anne Frank, you will get 50 hits of different places that took the Newsweek article. So it is what it is, but this is a new low, the Purdue one. So I've only mentioned this in passing. You will love this.
Right.
So I said to my listeners, write a respectful letter to Vice Provost John Gates, saying Dennis Prager has a recording of the speech, which is true. I actually sent it to him later, the video of my whole speech. And you owe him an apology. Nobody cursed him. They sent me their letters. So I get, a week later, a letter from him. Dear Mr. Prager, I would love to have coffee with you and let's chat.
Right.
So I wrote back, I said, if I as a Jew you said that the Holocaust wasn't bad, would you have coffee with me?
By the way, he's from Purdue. He should sit down for Boilermakers, not coffee. You take a stein of beer and you drop a shot of whiskey into it. You suck it up. Dennis does one before every show. So, but it takes the edge off. But the point is, this is insane. And then also, well, first off, I like to say, I have a saying. It's called stupid or liar, right?
That's
both of these things,
right.
Most things in life fall under the heading of stupid or liar. And these people aren't stupid, so they're lying. They should hope they're stupid.
This is my theory, all right? This is my theory. I don't think the question is, what does lie mean? By the way, I deal with this a lot. Do you have to know you're lying to lie? It's an interesting question. I mean, theoretically, if somebody said the earth is flat in the year 1100, were they lying? They were mistaken, but they certainly believed they were telling. It's an interesting and complex question. But I think it's actually worse than that. I think he thinks that a conservative would say that. That's what I think the issue is. In his mind, it did not strike him as odd that a conservative would think slavery was good. That's worse than lying.
Right, because that's grafting. What did you say? I know what you said in the fireside chat on the Anne Frank subject, but I think the audience would probably like to hear sort of pretty close to verbatim what you said about Anne Frank that turned you into ridicule and slavery.
Yeah, it's all available. Everything I do is public. So you can go, Dennis Prager Fireside Chat. Every week I put out through Prager University, which has a lot of views. I sit in my home, next to my bulldog, next to my fire, and I talk. And so I get questions mostly from young people literally around the world. We've gotten questions from 52 countries. But this was a guy from Idaho, said, Dennis, you frequently speak about people not being basically good. Human nature is not good. And yet Anne Frank wrote, I still believe in my heart that people are basically good. How do you react to what Anne Frank wrote? So I said, look, the woman is the icon of the Holocaust. She is the embodiment of the horror in what happened to her. But she was 15 or 16 years old. I don't get my wisdom from teenagers, and I just don't agree. I totally understand why, she might have to write it. Basically, that's what I said. So then I see in Newsweek, Dennis Prager ridicules Anne Frank. So I sent Newsweek the video. I sent the editor of Newsweek the video. And she said, yeah, you didn't, and she was in a terrible position because this is an assistant editor who wrote this.
Right.
But that's what I did. That's all I did. I differed with Anne Frank on the notion of people not being basically good.
Well, you didn't even really differ with Anne Frank. You differed with teenagers.
Yes,
essentially,
that's right.
Anne
right.
happened to be a teenager.
Yes, that is right.
At the time.
That's a good point.
You didn't say, I don't get my wisdom from this teenager. You said, I don't get my wisdom from teenagers.
That's right.
Which I wholeheartedly agree with. I have 2 teenagers I live with. They don't know jack or squat. I don't go to my 13-year-old son. Any pearls of wisdom that you could graft upon Daddy? Could you stop playing Fortnite long enough to come down from the mountain and share with your vast wealth? You don't have a driver's license. You probably don't have a pubic hair, but please. And all your months on this planet. You've never loved, you've never lost. I want to hear about all of it.
This is awesome.
And would anyone have criticized you for saying, I don't take my wisdom? I don't take my wisdom from teenagers is a controversial subject today.
Right.
Would it have been controversial when you were a teenager?
No, that's exactly. You don't know. I mean, I follow the comments, so that you have no idea how much, and it has no effect on me. Just please know this. There's no self-pity here. It means it's only, to me, educational to see what people write. He doesn't understand how much wisdom you could learn from a teenager. What a jerk. And the jerk was the nicest word they would use. But it's so amazing because what adult, is there one person living who is past teenagehood, forget 50 or 80, even 25, who thinks they are not wiser then than they were when they were a teenager? So who are we joking about? Of course we don't get wisdom. Did I think when I was 16 that I had wisdom to offer my parents or teenagers? Believe it or not, I knew I didn't. There was just a given that I'm 16. What do I really know? I knew that. But part of it, and this is interesting, because
But do you think these people would do this with the Native American population? Like, would you go to the village 10th grader and seek wisdom? Do you know what I mean?
That's such a good point.
If you took different cultures, if you went to different cultures where they had the elder, and the elder was the one you went to seek wisdom, would they critique that old guy? You think there's a guy in the village? Yeah, his name is Rick. He's 11. He's where everyone goes for advice. Would that work? Could you imagine that in a movie?
You're so right.
Don't worry about the old timer. Let's find that young kid. He knows everything.
No. People they live. They live in a make-believe world. Do you know that there are people who want the vote now to go to 16-year-olds? Yes, they're called Democrats, but I don't want to I don't want to politicize the dialogue here. But they do. They want the vote to go to 16-year-olds. Which only says to me, if you want the vote to go to a 16-year-old, there's only one possible explanation, and that is you think like a 16-year-old. So therefore, why should you be deprived of the vote? That's the only explanation.
I'm sorry, I cut you off with my village elder discussion.
That was brilliant. I loved it.
You were moving on to
the village younger.
Some point.
There is no such thing as the village younger.
No,
you're entirely right.
Well, but by the way, why don't we keep this going? Like, what about toddlers and zygotes? Like, don't they have the most wisdom? He's a newborn. Well, unswaddle him. We need information. Would you pull that? Pull that sucker out of his mouth. Pull his, give me his Huggy Bookie. Pull the pacifier out, and let's start with the pearls of wisdom.
All right, so you have teenage twins. It's an interesting question. By the way, I adore his children. They're just good kids, and I have no reason to say this. I only because it's true. So I am curious, how would they react to this discussion? Do you think that they think they have wisdom?
No. They think they know who certain performers are that I don't know, right? And they understand that they're better at getting a video from the computer onto the phone and then back to the other TV set. Right. They understand they're tech savvy, and they understand that they know more rappers than I do. But when it comes to wisdom, I never ask their advice for anything. And I never let them think that they know more than me, because they don't. And also, I don't want them thinking they know more than me, because they live in a house that I run. So right. I don't want the pilot of my airplane coming back to row 13 going, excuse me, landing gear, what do you know? Now, look, Larry, the co-pilot, says when we move the lever up, it goes down, but that's counterintuitive to me. I think it should, but anyway, we value your input. As a matter of fact, just come on up and land this bad boy. I don't want, would make me feel insecure, and my kids are essentially a passenger on my flight.
That's so beautifully put. Do you know, it isn't good for a kid to think that he is as wise as his parents.
No.
You don't want to believe that.
No, because you want to have thoughts as, if you're a child, I mean, to make it sort of mechanical, if there's an earthquake, what shall we do? If somebody breaks into our home, if there's a fire, what shall we do? Well, the smart old guy probably has a plan. Now, he doesn't know I'm drinking in my office. He thinks I'm studying an escape plan and making a map to where all the food is buried. But no, it's an insecurity. I grew up with that insecurity. And by the way, this is what drives me insane. We're taking kids. I saw a video of young girls, 6 years old, 7 years old, and it was during the Women's March from a few weeks ago, and they were yelling F Trump. And I thought to myself, these young girls who are yelling F Trump into a video camera also simultaneously believe in Santa Claus. And that's a weird way to go through life, right? Imagine being both at the same time.
Right.
They are going home and looking for the elf on the shelf that their mom moved the night before and screaming F Trump during the day. My feeling is let the kids be kids, and part of that deal is we have to be adults.
I remember being a kid very well, and I remember, for example, when I was at Columbia, when they dropped required courses, and they said students can decide what they want to study. And I remember thinking, wait a minute, this dean is 50 years old, I'm 22. He has devoted his life to education, and I am supposed to decide what I study? I remember thinking that way. It was actually painful to me that an adult more than twice my age claimed he did not know better what was good for me than I did.
And by the way, this was a young person who 10 years earlier, at age 12, was studying symphonic scores at a library. So he wasn't playing stickball in the street.
I did both, just for the
record.
A
lot of range. The point is this.
A lot of range.
He wasn't running around with a wind-up beanie.
That's right. Exactly,
on a hobby horse.
Right.
He was an exceptionally mature 22-year-old who said, I still would like to be guided.
That's right. Because children need the belief, even if it's not fully accurate. The adults know better. It gives us security. What children, I am convinced, by the way, I'd love your thought on this. I think that kids need security more, and guardrails, which is part of security, more than love. How many, you're most of you are around my age. And I bet you that the number of times you were told by your parents how much they love you was as much as I was, which was minimal. Okay? And somehow we grew up and navigated life. Now, some sea change took place in the 60s and 70s where children need to be showered with love. And the results are not promising. I just suspect I'm not in your home. I would love to know how often you tell your kids you love them.
I'm affectionate with my kids, but I'm also very realistic with my kids. I think what we're talking about, you're talking about guardrails and responsibility and being the adult gets manufactured into love. It gets processed into love.
Right.
So it enters your ears of, hey, no candy for breakfast, or hey, you got to do your homework, or hey, you need to be home before the streetlights are on. All these, hey, no, this, you can't. All the no's get translated into loves. And all the yeses just make angry, self-entitled kids. It's funny, we were talking some months ago, I think we're in Phoenix, and I was on Dennis's show, and Dennis said that after he got some notoriety, his mom put up a big picture of him
Yes.
in the living room.
No, thank God. No, in the basement. But it's a finished basement. People live there. This is back east. You may not know what a basement is, but yeah.
Dennis's mom was sort of hands off, and my mom
Correct.
had no hands.
Right.
So that's where we come from. So Dennis said to me, "Did your mom have a picture of you in your house?" And I said, "My mom didn't have a picture of me in her head."
Now you know what I have to live. Do you know it is actually difficult for me to do these things with him. As far as I'm concerned, I would sit here and just listen and crack up the whole time. But after all, people are paying to have me too. So I feel a moral obligation to say something. But I would be just happy to hear lines like that. But in a very serious point about both of us, because we come from as disparate a background as possible, and yet we see eye to eye on virtually all important things of life. There is something to be said. Our parents, his even more than mine, obviously. My mother, believe it or not, didn't hug me. My father didn't hug me. By the way, it's not a complaint, not at all. I am thrilled with how my life turned out. I have zero complaints, but it's just a fact. I was not hugged, and it was the opposite of what is done now. I see parents raising kids. If the kid sits on a toilet, it is as if they have won the Pulitzer Prize. Is that not correct?
Yeah.
Oh, God. Oh, I can't. You are magnificent. The way you sit on a toilet, it's awesome. It's awesome, my wonderful son.
And ring the bell when it's time for daddy to wipe. Yes, I think this whole self-esteem movement is a disaster.
A disaster, yes.
If you think about the self-esteem movement, it's sort of the opposite of a society, because a society needs basically, when you're merging onto the freeway, there's the zipper effect. You know, you go, then I go, then she goes, then he goes. If everyone has amazing self-esteem, then everyone...
That is a multiple car crash.
Right.
Yes.
Our society is built on no or low self-esteem. That's what a society is. You can live in the space station alone and have super high self-esteem. That'll work, but you can't do it in a parking lot because there's a little after you, or I got here first, or yes, you were. So and we're seeing it manifest itself. I do believe.
You mean the high self-esteem movement? Yeah. Well, that you can't tell me what to think, or if you come to our whole movie. Safe spaces at colleges. If somebody comes to campus who says something you differ with, you go, I don't know if you know this is a real thing in colleges. It's called a safe space. If someone comes to your campus with whom you differ, you go to the safe space, you're given hot chocolate, you watch movies of puppies and kittens frolicking, you play with Play-Doh. This is actually done. This is the high self-esteem thing. So I have a test for people. I don't know if you've heard me say this, Adam, but this is a great test. All of you should think, every one of you has this in your life, someone or two or three people you think are the finest people you know, the kindest people, the greatest integrity. Ask them if they grew up with high self-esteem. I am certain that the answer will be no. The kindest, finest people you know did not grow up with high self-esteem.
It's also a flawed premise, high self-esteem, in that I can graft that onto you. You must achieve things.
Yeah, you earn it.
I can't just give you
Yes.
that any more than I could put you on the box of Wheaties. You need to earn your way onto the box of Wheaties. I could take a picture of you and Photoshop it onto a box of Wheaties, and it would mean nothing to anyone, including you. So this notion that we're going to feed people a diet of self-esteem, you must go out and hunt your own self-esteem.
I used to play racquetball with my kids, and and whatever other game, Ghost, the letters game, you add a letter till you spell 4 letters, make a word. And I never, ever, ever let my kids win. I didn't let them win. I kept winning. And there were people who thought, you're a bully. You're an adult and you're beating your kid in Ghost. You're beating your kid in racquetball. And I said, that's right, because one day they'll beat me and then they will have earned their self-esteem. And
True story. Dennis met my son when he was 7, and he challenged him to an arm wrestling match. And that kid must have flown 20 feet in the air. I of course thought he was going to do you're getting me. This kid sailed across. I mean, he was a small 7-year-old, so he probably weighed 60 pounds. Tom Dennis he yelled no mercy.
Exactly.
And then he stood over him and verbally taunted him. And I keep explaining to my wife, we should have the Pragers back. And I said he's put on 30 pounds. He could probably take it. Dennis is considerably older. She's just not going to let him back in the house.
It was truly a destructive movement, I'm sorry to say. It sounds right, kid has self-esteem and so on. When I meet kids who have high self-esteem, they scare me. To be perfectly honest, I don't want a kid to think he's a piece of junk. There's a big difference between not having high self-esteem and thinking you're awful. I'm not advocating that. Be realistic.
Yeah, the kid who had the highest measured self-esteem ever was the kid from the Twilight Zone who wished everyone out into the cornfield.
I didn't see
kid,
that one.
I know. It's
no, I know Twilight Zone.
There's a box
episode.
that they call TV.
No.
It's a magical box, and images flow through the box.
In color or black and white?
Well, it used to be in black and white.
Okay.
Now that kid had the power to wish anybody who disagreed with him into the cornfield.
Yeah.
And so the adults got around him and started going, it's a real good thing what you did, Billy. It's a real good thing, because they didn't want to be wished out into the cornfield. And I say, when you hear these politicians apologize, or the faculty member or the author or the whatever, for saying there's only two sexes, and I made a mistake, and I misspoke, and I wish I hadn't, and I want to reach out to the transgender community. I always go, because they were going to get wished into the cornfield.
Oh, that's so intelligent. That's exactly right.
Because they're all the kids on Twitter, and if you come out and you make a statement, you will get, and you've seen Martina Navratilova and all these people get J.K. Rowling and all those. They got wished into the cornfield.
Yes, he's referring to Martina Navratilova is a lesbian, and she was a great tennis star in the 80s and 90s.
You can just say lesbian.
What did I say?
You said tennis star. We did the math.
Oh, I see. Okay. She was both, though. They're both relevant.
Sorry.
So she has been an activist for gay rights her whole life and for gay athletes. But she said it's not fair if biological men who identify as women compete against biological women. They have all the records now in Connecticut in high school track are owned by trans female. In other words, biological men who have raced against girls, and they won all the races. And we're supposed to believe that is fair, otherwise we get sent to the cornfield.
We get wished in the cornfield.
So she spoke out, Martina Navratilova, after a lifetime of gay activism, said this is not fair to women. She's kicked out of the LGBT movement. She is considered a hater.
And the thing about all these movements that I think Dennis taps into, and I do too, is the irony is you are a champion for women's rights, so you will let a woman have her orbital socket crushed by what was a biological man in an octagon.
Yeah, you know what? Mixed martial arts, in the fighting, those fighting things that they now have. And they allow biological men to punch biological women if he says I am a female. So one went to the hospital with a concussion.
Right, but it's ironic that the pro-women are championing that cause.
That's right. Well, it's not. I don't think it's ironic, but your point is well taken. It seems ironic.
Why don't
I think it's ironic?
Yeah.
Because,
I know. I listen to your show, but you tell the audience.
Yeah, well, because these people, I don't believe that I don't believe that I don't want to too much politicize the discussion, but I can't help it in this case. I don't really believe that the feminist movement, as opposed to individual feminist women, obviously, but the movement does not really care about women as much as it cares about overthrowing societal norms. That's the way I would put it to you. And so, therefore, this would protect women. I'm sorry if you are biologically male. We fully honor your identity as a female. That's fine, but you cannot race against biological females. It's just not fair. I mean, it's so obviously not fair that the fact that one has to make the case for it shows you that societal norms, that objective thinking has been undermined in our society. So I think women were used by the movement more than protected by the movement.
Let's circle back to finish the discussion on Purdue, because I never did hear exactly what you said at Purdue.
Well, I looked, and I don't understand. I said something to the effect, because I got a transcript, and I said something to the effect of that, and I'm not even being totally fair to myself, because there was almost nothing mentioned in an hour and a half speech about slavery, but I mentioned communism is slavery, and under communism, everybody's equal. So there you go. There must be something good about communism and slavery. So who would think that I'm saying slavery is good as a result of that? I mean, it's so bizarre. I'm saying, but that's one thing that's true. I mean, and for that matter, most slaves had health care. I mean, that's right, because it was a bad deal for the owner to lose a slave. I mean, I'm pro-healthcare, by the way, just for the record. I could just see someone saying Prager's against healthcare because slaves had healthcare. I mean, it's just it's very hard. I'm pretty good at avoiding even one sentence that could be mangled, because I'm aware of the fact that there are so many people listening who want to mangle what I said. There was a huge article in the New York Times on Prager University, the thing that obviously is named after me and I'm president of. We have 1 billion views a year, so it's very big, and the New York Times had a very big article on it. And neither they, nor the LA Times, or BuzzFeed, or Mother Jones, all of whom don't like us, could find one line that I have said in my life to mangle. That's how careful I am, and yet I do say what I believe. But I know how to say it.
But you do a lot of drunk tweeting.
Yes.
Because I did do your fireside chat, and you were 3/4 into a bottle of Manischewitz, and your wife was trying to hide it, and she was trying to get your phone away from you. I remember that.
My vice is cigars, ladies and gentlemen. I never found alcoholic stuff. I have nothing against people drinking. The irony is my father loved to drink, my son loves to drink, and I'm in the middle, and I just don't like it. But if I liked it, I actually wish I did like it. I hate missing out on any pleasure. No, I really do. I want you to know that is a big part of my life. You mean there's something people really love and I don't? That ticks me off. But I don't. On the other hand, you don't really love cigars.
No, but I'll tell you after the show about the bisexual lifestyle.
Yes, which is what did Woody Allen say? It doubles your chance for a date. Yeah. Right.
I was going to give him credit when I told him about it backstage. But think about the concept, Dennis, and picture yourself. Now, you ingest other people's words on a daily basis. You read several newspapers, you listen, you ingest, and then we're in the business. I do a podcast. Dennis does a radio show and podcast, so it's turned into a podcast. But we're in the business of absorbing information, thoughts, other people's thoughts. Some thoughts we agree with, oftentimes we don't, and hearing what they have to say, and then trying to create product, thoughts, rebuttals, and things of that. But we're not in the business of hacking and twisting. No. You know what I mean? And could you, I don't know who these people are. I don't know how they can go to bed at night. I don't know how they can look in the mirror. So our job is to go over the transcripts and sort of, I'm just going to jump into the Dennis Prager dumpster, and I'm going to go through every piece of garbage, and I'm going to see if I can cobble together something that makes him look bad. Even if there's nothing really in there, I think I can find enough stuff to put something together. And sure, it's going to be a version of this thing. It's not going to be accurate as to what he said. First off, what do these people do for a living?
Oh, I always wonder that. I do. Yeah.
What do you do? Well, I listen very closely to guys I disagree with who make speeches and who give fireside chats, and then I whack it all up into some sort of Mad Lib thing that makes them look bad. Really? That's what you do? And you call yourself a journalist?
Yes, that's right.
That would be the opposite of being a journalist.
I'll give you another example. Years ago, I wrote a column, and I mentioned, how many of you attended my happiness talk? Okay, perfect. So you heard me mention this, in fact. The so what idea on, if a woman loves her husband, so what? You're not in the mood. So on occasion, say, so what? Hi, honey, let's get together. That's fine. So I wrote a two-part, you could see it, it's still up on the internet. I wrote a two-part column, when a woman is not in the mood, when a wife is not in the mood. That's what it's titled. So you could agree with me, disagree with me, fine. But the biggest left-wing site, moveon.org, then published, and so did the Huffington Post for that matter. They both published the thing, Dennis Prager advocates marital rape. when my whole thesis was, if your husband is a wonderful man and you love him and you want to have a wonderful marriage, then on occasion, if you're not in the mood, it's still worth doing.
I
Yeah.
wrote a column some years ago called "When a Stranger Falls Asleep Next to You on a Bus," and it had many of the same elements. I was attacked.
Yes, I don't know why. That is really mangling.
The broader strokes of Dennis's argument were very much alive in my article, and yet I was attacked.
I can't understand why. And now that we do things together, that makes perfect sense to them.
That's right.
Yes, exactly.
And painted with the same brush you're getting painted with.
Yes, exactly.
Right. So you know, it's funny. I talked to somebody and they said, well, maybe, somebody misunderstood or whatever. I said, I'm in the business of clarity. You know what I mean?
Right.
I said, you can't do stand-up comedy and be confusing.
Right. That's
You,
such a good
it has
point.
to
That
be
is so-
clear. You have
Yes.
2 minutes to set something up, and then you pay something off. And if the people in the audience are going, what's he talking about? That's never happened to me, or I don't get the reference, or I don't know what it is, then you can't be a comic. The business of doing comedy is the business of being clear. Now, it doesn't mean every joke is a 10. It just means
Every
you're
joke
clear.
is clear. That's
it's
right.
clear,
Yeah.
and you're in the business of clarity.
That's right.
And when you do your radio show, or you do your fireside chat, or you do your column, you are extra clear. So for a person who speaks English as their first language and who has a college degree, to take your clarity
It's deliberate.
and turn it into something,
Right.
it has to be deliberate.
It has to be. That's exactly right. No, it's very sad that happens. And then the problem is that it stays on there. That's the problem. Otherwise, I wouldn't care. I mean, so there are 10, 15 left-wing sites then headline Dennis Prager ridiculed Anne Frank. And that's still there. And I even mentioned them in my article. I said, Newsweek took this back. Will you now announce that Newsweek took it back, that Dennis Prager really never did what you wrote? And instead they write, oh, how dare he say that we need to take this back? It was like I was wrong in even asking. I told the story. It's a really great one. So I mentioned that I attended yeshiva, which is intense Jewish learning through the age of 18. There's a great story that every yeshiva kid knows, everyone. It's very famous because it was drummed into our brain, never say things that are not true about people. It was drummed, in fact, there's a very famous line in Hebrew, whoever humiliates his neighbor, it's as if he has killed him. And it stayed in me. I forbade Monica Lewinsky jokes on my program because I said she's created in God's image and I will not mock her on this show. So you cannot call in and tell a joke about her. This was during the Clinton era. So I took this very seriously. And here's the story. I don't know if you've seen it, but when I wrote it in my column, but very quickly, a guy badmouths his rabbi. This is from Eastern Europe, this story. It's a joke, obviously, but it's a great one. It's not a joke. It's just a story that conveys a lesson. So he goes, Rabbi, I really feel bad. I apologize terribly for all these things I said about you. Can you forgive me? So the rabbi says, oh, just bring me 2 feather pillows. So the man brings the rabbi 2 feather pillows, and he says, okay, am I forgiven? He says, no, now just cut them open. Okay, the rabbi said, cut them open, I'll cut them open. And then he said, okay, you forgive me now, Rabbi? He says, no, 2 more things. Let the feathers fly out. He says, okay, they're flown away. He said, now am I forgiven? 1 more thing. Bring back the feathers. That's what happens when you say bad things about people. You can't bring back the feathers. And that's what I wrote in my column about all these things like Newsweek. Newsweek took it back, but the feathers are out there.
And how, last question, you have to live with those feathers out there. And ironically, you have to get a sort of armadillo skin.
That's right.
To deal with the down feathers
Right.
that are scattered
Right.
about. And I think for you, would you say your faith helps, aids in that quite a bit?
Yes, it does. It's an interesting question for another time, but yes, it does. I do believe that in the final analysis, a good God governs the universe, and in the long term, good and truth will prevail, even if not in my lifetime. And that does give me some solace. That is correct. Yep.
If you can't treat life like it's a popularity contest, and
That's right.
you can't treat, and we started off saying you can't treat your kids like it's a popularity contest between you and your wife. You have to lay down the law. And later on in life, you can't treat society like you're trying to win a popularity contest. It's difficult to be on the losing end of some of that stuff, and I have certainly myself, but ultimately, unlike the professor or the Pope of inclusion from Purdue, I get to look in the mirror and be just fine. I don't like what's looking back at me, but not for moral reasons. Physically, I'm disgusted by myself.
Let me end by saying he doesn't believe in God. I do. We share virtually everything else, as you could see. And I'll just put this little thing into his brain. It's very possible God, in his infinite sense of humor and goodness, brought us together. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Dennis Prager.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.